time of tradition. There were three filmmakers with nothing in common. They thought they had it all figured out. They don't just follow the movies, they make them. Alexander Pavlak, Mario Silvas, and Jamal Alexander are the makers on film.
Hello and thank you for joining us again here on Makers on Film. I am Alexander Pavlak, writer-director, and with me is Jamal Alexander, actor.
Yep.
And usually we have Mario I. Silvas with us, who's a sound guy and a cinematographer, but today he is on assignment, so it's just going to be Jamal and I.
Which works fine. We can say whatever we want about Mario, and he has no say about it until he actually hears the show.
But she doesn't listen to the show, so I guess he'll never hear about it.
You'll never hear about it.
Did you hear that B.B. King died?
I did. I'm sad.
That was very sad. I heard about it actually upon arriving into L.A. I was driving that night that he died.
Just hard to put into words just how big a loss that is. Just how many legends like of that caliber do you know who are left?
There's not a lot. I mean, he transcended genres. You know, he was a blues guy, but everybody knew him.
Yeah. And I think it's because I feel like he stuck to his guns and stayed in that genre. He may have strayed out like for a single or two, but for the most part, he associated himself with one genre of music so much so that it won over people who weren't even fans of that genre. I mean, he off the back of how good he was at that one thing that he chose to be good at.
So we'll give a little moments of silence for his passing. On a slightly lighter note, you were saying that you were getting some positive feedback about the show. Why don't you go ahead and tell us about that?
No, I mostly positive stuff about me. Clearly, that's the important thing.
Did you let your mom listen to the show?
Yes. My parents know nothing about this, and they know nothing about what I spent all that money they were sending me for college for. So we're gonna ignore that.
That sex dungeon you have in your basement?
Hey. That doubles as a rec room, thank you very much. But mostly I've been getting other opinions of people who would like to be guests on the show, I guess. The opinions about movies like the Wes Anderson thing we were talking about last week, I just got an opinion about today, which was really insightful. I've been getting reactions like 10 minutes into the show, somebody wanted to punch me in the face, which is the goal when you're the personality on air.
Well, yeah, I love you or hate you. At least they have some sort of response to you. At least they're listening to you.
Yeah, good stuff about the topics we've been choosing, because I most of my friends are film and film buffs and nerds, and they're responding to the things we've been doing.
Right on. So the people who may want to be guests on the show, I take it, are they filmmakers or just film enthusiasts?
They're hardcore film enthusiasts. With some very valid points, because I find myself engaging them in the same sort of conversations we have on this show, and they bring up some really good points that unfortunately my two co-hosts do not.
Well, I'm not opposed to having guests on. In fact, I was going to start looking into it. Maybe once a month, have somebody come in and sit in with us.
Honestly, what we need is a female.
We do, desperately, and probably one for the show too.
Yes, I had not thought of that, but yeah, they'd be great on the show too.
Yeah. I mean, it would be nice to have the feminine perspective, and if there are any female filmmakers out there listening to this who want to do a guest spot or join the cast, why don't you go ahead and go over to mof.ninja and leave a comment on one of the episodes and letting us know some of your credentials, and of course, who you like best on the show.
Me.
Not if they want a job.
Me.
Okay. So you had me just watch the trailer to the new Schwarzenegger movie coming out, Maggie.
Yes.
Yeah. This is very interesting, actually, I have to say.
It's Arnold Schwarzenegger acting.
I was just going to say that. He looks like he actually does some acting in this film.
It is incredible.
Yeah, and it looks like it's not him being a like in Commando, like that character where he just goes in and kicks a bunch of ass. He actually looks like he's just an average guy in this one.
Yeah. And it's not a persona, it's an actual character. The other stuff, the action hero things, I think he goes in there with his trademark, which he has down pat. Everything you see about his performances on there is a routine that he has down pat, and it's a persona that he portrays in multiple films, and it's worked really really well. This is like one of the rare times you actually see him get out there and actually try to create something.
Yeah, to create something or to emote, correct.
Yeah.
I'm actually watching this trailer, and I thought of this the first time I watched it. It actually puts me in mind of the game The Last of Us. I don't know if you've ever played that or saw any trailers for that or anything.
I've seen a bunch of trailers for it. Yeah.
Okay, it's a really good game. It's very story heavy. So a lot of people didn't like it because there's not a lot of, well, there is some action to it, but you can do the whole game without killing anybody, sneaking around, stuff like that. And it's very interesting, and it's very much a guy who is taking a little girl, like I think she's like 14 or something, to across the country to a place where supposedly they can find a cure from her blood or whatever, because she's the only one who seems to be immune to the whole zombie outbreak.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this one is a little different. It seems like in this zombie apocalypse, you get to keep your loved ones until they turn into a zombie.
That and I like the way they're playing it. Like it's basically zombieism is a stand-in, a metaphor for like some sort of terminal disease that's slowly killing somebody. And the movie seems like it's about a father watching as his daughter slowly dies, and it's heavy stuff. And yeah, it's the heart, the tear-jerking, heartbreaking kind of stuff that you know movies like that are made for.
Personally, the best zombie films are always the ones where the zombies represent something else. That if it's just a movie about the dead rising, then it's usually it's okay, but it always lacks something. There's always like subtext that's always lacking in those. So like George A. Romero was very good at doing those kind of things, and this one looks very much like that. Like you said, the watching somebody slowly die and coming to terms with that.
Using a zombie apocalypse or the actual process of becoming a zombie as allegory for something larger, something real,
Mm-hmm.
I think is an ingenious idea.
Oh yeah.
And it speaks to how good things are getting lately with and how serious attempts at what were once just like popcorn flicks like zombie films has changed the landscape. Where if I saw a movie that was strictly about the dead rising and people trying to surviving, I would think something like Zombieland or
Mm-hmm.
something that's fun like that, like an action movie like that, where you just get these human-like characters you just get to blow away with a shotgun or something.
Right.
Well, that's the kind of movie I think of when it's just the dead rising. If it's something other than that, then I expect like a real, like concerted character study, character driven project.
Right.
Have you seen JCVD?
No, I haven't.
Oh, you need to see that movie. It's John Claude Van Damme offering what should have been an Oscar nominated performance. I'm not kidding you. I'm not. That's not an exaggeration. You really, really do. I have it on DVD if you ever want to borrow it.
Okay.
JCVD, and this looks like it's that for Schwarzenegger. I hope does turn out to be this transformative role that kind of changes the trajectory of his career. Because I'm not gonna lie, I'm not overtly optimistic about his future in action.
Well, he's getting
Um,
kind of old.
he's getting a hella old. Uh, and even by old guy standards, I don't. He's not. He doesn't have the presence and voice of Liam Neeson, and he's not nearly in as good a shape as Stallone.
Yeah.
And so something's got to change. Stallone might have 5 years left in him in that genre. I don't know that Schwarzenegger has two.
I think he's noticing this about himself. He's the Terminator Genesis, the way the advertisement's going. We're not seeing a lot of Schwarzenegger doing action, but I mean, we're seeing a little bit of it, but I think he might be doing that as kind of a farewell to action movie.
I do like what it looks like he's doing in Maggie, though, where it's Arnold Schwarzenegger with facial expressions is awesome.
You don't
That's
you don't see that much.
no, you do not see that much. Oddly enough, if you were to ask me what was the other time or the one time that I've actually seen Arnold Schwarzenegger put forth a really good performance, I'm going to say Junior.
I haven't seen Junior. I haven't seen all of Junior. I've seen some of it.
It's understated, and you should read Roger Ebert's review of it. He's solidly in Schwarzenegger's corner on this. It's understated, it's subtle, it's dare I say nuanced. I mean, he's not bringing the traditional Schwarzenegger prepackaged I'm an A-list leading man thing. He's actually in there, thinking about the scene, thinking about the lines in between. It works for him. His co-stars may not think so, but I thought it was a really good performance on his part.
I've been told from time to time that I look like Robert Englund,
I could see that. Yeah.
but it's usually only by African American women.
Now it makes sense. Okay,
Well,
okay. Now
well,
I
no,
get it. I see it.
it's funny because my hair's a little curly, and if it gets long, it gets a little curly, and every once in a while, I was working at a costume shop at one point, and women would come in all the time, and every once in a while, an African American chick would come in, and they'd be all like, you look kind of like Robert Englund," and I give them a look, and they're like, "Oh, out of the Freddy Krueger makeup,"
Oh,
and I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna take that as a compliment," and they would always say, "Oh no, it is a compliment. He's a very good-looking man." So in my mind, I'm thinking, wow, Freddy Krueger scores big with black chicks.
apparently.
I was at the Rupaul DragCon this weekend.
That's right. You mentioned that last week. How was it? What did you do?
Um, okay, so I've been to a number of cons in the past, mostly Comic-Con, Star Trek conventions. I've done a couple entrepreneur cons. This is the first one that had anything to do with the gay and lesbian community. Most of the cons that I've been to, I've either have been just a regular participant or regular member, person who just comes in, regular audience member. The Comic Cons here in Phoenix, I've been getting press passes because of my blog and now because of this show. So I've been able to go places at times that most people couldn't, or that people were being turned away from because it was packed. Because I had press pass, they would let me in. This time, I'm going in as an exhibitor. My friend Rachel she's a fashion designer. She does a lot of like steampunk stuff, corsets, bustles, things of that nature. She had a booth there. I volunteered to help her out with that, to do some documentary work and just generally help her out with it. And kind of because I don't really like music, which I know is a weird thing for people to say. But there are some people who are really, really into music, so much so that they'll go to a concert no matter who it is, just for that concert experience and for the music. I think, to me, cons are my concerts. I will probably go to any con, especially if I'm getting, free passes or kind of backstage things, just because it's a con and I kind of want to see what's going on there. So I go there as an exhibitor, and we learn pretty quick that exhibitors get access to some of the backstage areas that even press and other people don't get. We can go out onto the back patio and smoke with all the celebrities who are there. And there's actually a little lounge area that all the celebrities go to when they need a break from the crowd, and they're tired of doing signatures and stuff. They can go back there and kind of hang out and and relax. I'm going to assume that you've actually never seen the show, have you, Joel?
It's been on my DVR.
Have you actually watched it?
No.
I've seen all but one season. The first season, for some reason, it's not on Netflix. So my friend Rachel doesn't really watch the show. She knows it exists. She's watched some of this season, but she hasn't watched any of the other seasons. While we're setting up, people will walk by, and sometimes they'll stop and look at what we're doing and our stuff, and then go on, or they'll stop by and then talk to Rachel, see what she's all about, and continue on. And then I'll whisper into her ear that so and so from whatever season, because she has no idea who any of these people are. So it was very interesting to be there before the whole thing opened up, to see these people who are they're not major celebrities, but they're major celebrities in this community. It's very interesting to be backstage and watch these people walk around and be kind of people instead of being on and being on that other side of the table and doing autographs, actually being able to talk with them and kind of hang out with them as people. I did pay to get one autograph, and that was RuPaul's, mostly because this is the first Rupaul DragCon. And so I figured I'm going to go and have her sign my badge.
Right.
Because it may be a collector's item someday. It's a unique badge because it's an exhibitor badge. And I've actually noticed that at the end of the con, a lot of exhibitors threw away their badges. And I thought that was kind of weird. But whatever. So, I got mine signed. I collect my badges. I have a small collection of them since I've been, getting free badges, for being press or being, now an exhibitor. I've been keeping those. But this is the first one I ever got signed. So before the crowd shows up for the day, I go and I talk to the people who are in charge of all that. And she's like, what we're doing for the exhibitors is we're putting them in the VIP line so they don't, spend too much time away from their booth, because these lines get pretty long. So yeah, so they're like, okay, just come by a little bit later on whenever you got the time, and you'll pay the $40 and you'll get in. While I was doing that, I go back to the booth, and it's a half hour before they let the crowds in. Rachel was having problems with the internet service. You had to pay $50 per day per device to have internet there. So we wanted to do a live stream, and we didn't have, her computer wasn't capable of hooking up to a 5G network. So we brought in my iPad the next day, and she was having problems paying for it.
Hang on, that just seems like a real rip to make you guys pay for that. By the way, as the vendors there.
It is, but every con does this. Phoenix Comic-Con is actually kind of worse. They charge a lot more for it. They have a package for the 4 days, so you're paying $150, $175 for the 4 days that you're there, but you still have to pay for it. And a lot of them don't do that. So you see a lot of vendors kind of running around trying to get a cell phone signal so they can do credit card purchases. So she's trying to get that taken care of, and she's standing there talking to one of the convention workers. And all of a sudden, she sees out of her peripheral somebody walks up, and all of a sudden, all the convention workers around her stop dealing with her and go attend to this other person. She turns to their side and sees RuPaul standing next to her. And RuPaul is like, I have a little problem. There's somebody in my dressing room. I'm supposed to have my own dressing room. Can somebody go take care of that? And from my understanding, that's how she said it. She wasn't flipping over tables. She wasn't hulking out. She wasn't yelling. She wasn't screaming. She was just like, I'm supposed to have my own dressing room. Somebody's in my dressing room. Go take care of it. So I thought that was kind of cool, because her name's on the con. She could be the biggest diva, the biggest bitch that she wants, and she's kind of being cool about it. But Rachel looks over and is standing next to RuPaul and says, "Hi, RuPaul, how you doing today?" And RuPaul looks at her, looks her up and down, and goes, "Mm-hmm," and then walks away and gets into her dressing room. So we're not really sure what that meant, if that was a good thing or not.
It doesn't sound like a good thing.
It doesn't sound like a good thing, and my theory is that Rue is probably not a morning person, and everybody's lucky that they didn't get their head bit off. But, I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she just was like, "Why are you talking to me, you strange woman with a feathered mohawk?"
Wow. It just does not sound like something very nice. I mean, they're all there kind of supporting you. They're at your event.
I took a PA boot camp, and the first thing they teach you is you don't talk directly to the celebrities. If you're on a set and you're a PA and you're told to go get Bruce Willis from his trailer to get him to set, you don't go up to Bruce Willis and say, "Hey, dude, we need you on set." You go up to his people. His people tell him they're ready for you on set. They don't say you need to be on set. They say we're ready for you or they're ready for you. And then you follow 10 steps behind him as he meanders around the lot or the set or the location, going everywhere but where he needs to be. And you can never say, look, yo, it's over here, let me show you. You are on the radio telling the assistant director, yeah, he's at craft services, or he's going to the bathroom, or he's rounding the corner, or he's coming into the soundstage. You never tell him we need to get going, hurry up, because celebrities are in their own little world and little time frame, and they don't believe in dealing with the people.
Yeah, that why? Why?
And no matter how nice a celebrity seems when you're at a con and you're talking to them and they're all smiles and giggles and laugh at your joke and sign your thing, that is them in character.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're doing that because a lot of them do that because you made them who they are and they want to give back to you. That doesn't mean they don't find you annoying. And they're also there doing it for the money, because a lot of them, that's a lot of money doing the cons, especially if you're not doing TV or movies or anything else.
You know what? It's the ones that you never hear stuff about that I appreciate more as I get older. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger, they're out there filming The Last Stand. And it's late at night. Everybody's cold. What does he do on his lunch break or something? He jumps in his car, drives out to a Walmart, buys every jacket he can find, and brings it back to the crew. I'm beginning to appreciate people that do that.
Yeah.
As I'm getting older in life, I'm beginning to appreciate things like that, and not appreciating the other things I hear. Like I don't want to look on screen and go, wow, the kind of hell that this guy must have given people while he was making this scene happen.
Well, I mean, if you notice, a lot of the actors who give problems to directors and producers don't really do a lot of work. Those prima donnas, they start getting phased out. I mean, they're a name, and you'll put up with them for a little bit, but you try to phase them out after a while.
Christian Bale is a good example of somebody that seems to be doing just fine. How long that lasts, I don't know. Well, and I take that back. At least he was doing it because he was doing it for artistic purposes. Bruce Willis should not still be getting work.
He doesn't get that much. He other than what was the last thing that he did? The last thing I remember him doing was the last Die Hard movie, Die Hard 5.
Yeah, that's all I can that comes to mind. I mean, he had Moonrise Kingdom. That was his last really serious thing, and then that was it. And I'm pretty sure he's probably not going to get another Wes Anderson film.
Probably not.
To segue from RuPaul, I got to tell you, your subject for this week, heavy stuff.
Yes, it was heavy. Twist of Faith. It's a story about a person who, when in high school, was molested by a priest. This person is somebody that I knew, not very well, but I went to the same high school with them during the same time. I was a year behind them, and I wanted to go to the retreat in which he initially got molested at, and my parents said no, and my mom literally saved my ass that day, and
we'll let you fans decide whether that joke was in bad taste or not. Please leave a comment.
Of course it's in bad taste, but I'm not always tasteful. But the priest will never know that.
Was that joke in bad taste?
That was probably in worse taste.
Okay.
For the documentary, the story picks up several years later when he's suing the Archdiocese of Toledo, Ohio, for the molestation. And do you want to go ahead with your impressions of it?
I could talk about the documentary in itself. I could talk about the subject matter. I could talk about the. Well, here, you knew the person you knew. Is he the lead guy?
Yeah.
Can we? Is it alright if we say it by name?
Yeah.
Yeah, Tony Combs. So you knew Tony Combs.
Yeah, like I said, we weren't the best of friends. We didn't hang out a lot, but we went to the same high school. We did interact a bit.
Watching him through this is it is absolutely fascinating character study. Like, it's one thing to see that kind of transformation in people when it's a scripted, rehearsed, manufactured fake film. It's another thing when you're watching somebody go through the kind of transformation he goes through in this documentary, and it's happening for real.
Mm-hmm.
Like it is, the changes he goes through within the time span. I believe this movie is like only what hour and a half long.
Yeah.
The doc is only an hour and a half long.
Right.
I mean, the sort of things he goes through, they would make for great, compelling television. But you would, or movies, you would see it, you would read about it in a script, and you go, "That's great," but nobody would do that in real life, or at least not in the way that it's being portrayed. It's actually happening in this film. He has a conversation in this movie towards the end with his mom that I don't know that I could have written that dialogue that good.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. Uh, it's hard to explain just how real, how how gripping this is,
How emotional it is.
how engrossing this movie is, how it really sucks you in.
Yeah.
For being a documentary, it's a documentary. It's not supposed to do that. It's supposed to represent the world in its natural state, in its real form. It's not supposed to kind of like there's no cliffhangers here. There's no beats, emotional beats in between scenes. It is just a straightforward representation of the real world. For it to have that sort of, kind of like, and I think you and me were in the same class when we learned this term, dunomas. Do you remember that word?
Do no more. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It was the catharsis, that emotional, kind of like reward you get from a film. To get that from a documentary either speaks to the documentary itself, or to the human condition, where you could actually see that happening in without adding any bells and whistles to this story. That happened in real life.
The documentary itself is just very powerful from beginning to end, and throughout the whole thing he tries to make light of the situation, and as it goes on it just gets heavier and heavier, and at the end he's just sobbing over not only what had happened to him as a child, but what's currently happening to him. And the thing is that he set out to have this goal, that he wanted to bring all this to light, that he wanted to show what had happened to him. And it wasn't about the money, it was about bringing those people to justice. And at the end he learned, and this is really what got me, and this is really what kind of made me question a lot of things in my life, that it got so heavy for him that he had to abandon his goals and take whatever settlement that the Catholic Church was offering him, because he just couldn't go on anymore. And it made me cry a little bit.
The actual watching him actually decide to take on this fight, and then to stay with the fight after you're watching everything that happens, because he goes through an emotional and physical transformation that you watch progress throughout the entire film. If you were to see that on film, you would say that's just great script writing. The fact that it actually happens in real life, the way that he commits to it when for no visible reason, not one that you could see, because and you'll know by the end of the film, when he accepts the money and the amount of the money, that it wasn't never really, he wasn't out there for personal gain. He took on a mission, a spiritual soul gratification type thing, where he felt he really had to do this. It's You see that in film all the time, and you think, well, that's just over dramatized. It's Hollywood sensationalism. It's blowing up this little thing. No, it can happen in real life, and this guy actually goes through it, and it's admirable. I'm fascinated by this guy now, because you see in the first few minutes, you kind of get a sense of who he is in the first few minutes of the film. Like anger is a huge thing in this documentary, and probably a huge thing in his life, and you get that right away. But there's so much more, and I've never met this human being, and I find myself talking about him like he's a character. There's a lot. He's a layered human being, and you see that fully come out in this film. Like like I got the sense immediately of him that there was a little edge to him. That there's a almost a hostility to him. And then as this film progresses, you really start to figure out why. It's fascinating to actually listen to him actually convey his thoughts over and really get into the psychology of a person like this and really get into the psychology of what happens when things like this happen to young people. Did I just blow you away there, or?
No, there's a movie, and I'm trying to find it, that actually touches on a lot of these things. Is this it?
And well, if you're gonna do it, I'm gonna keep going. Just it's also fascinating just to see how religion is such an integral part of certain people's lives. Like I'm not I, I'm agnostic is what I would probably use to describe it. To be perfectly honest with you, when I think of God, I think of Jesus and all of that. But I'm not overtly spiritual. I'm not in church every Sunday. I don't do any of that. So for me, watching this film was absolutely fascinating just to watch how important religion was to people's lives at this point, where even knowing what they know about this church and being treated the way that they were treated by this church, it is a major factor in the life of that family that they still remain in that church. And it becomes a point of tension when they're divided on whether or not to stay in that church. And to see him actually go back to it, knowing full, after everything else that had happened to him, to actually go back to the Catholic Church, just it was fast. I can't think of another word. Fascinating is the word I would use to describe this.
Like you say, in some points it does seem kind of unbelievable that it seems like if that were in a script or in a movie, you would be like, no, nobody would ever do that. But it's kind of like a battered wife thing where, even though you're abused and you run away, you eventually go back because that's the only life you know. And even though he had this horrific event happen to him in life, you know, he has been raised this way, this religious way, all his life, and he can't turn his back away from the church. And it's kind of sad that you can't just walk away from that. And that's because I've never been a devout Catholic. I've been raised Roman Catholic and did 13 years of Catholic education and all this. So I'm used to going to church every Sunday. I'm used to no pun intended, having this drilled into me on a regular basis. But it's like at a certain point, I was like, you hear all this stuff about the Catholic Church, and then you find out it happened to somebody in your town, in your school, that could have been you, kind of a thing. And you're just like, you gotta kind of walk away from it. You gotta step away from it. Otherwise, it could be you. And I found the movie that I was looking for. It's called Sleepers. Kevin Bacon, Robert De Niro, Minnie Driver. It's about kids who got into trouble. They pulled a prank and somebody died, and they end up going to like a juvie detention center, and then they get raped by one of the guards. And it's about how they're trying to cope with it and the lack thereof of them coping with it, and it these kind of things. And I believe one of the characters actually did this in Sleepers. It leads to suicide at times because the young mind can't fully comprehend what's going on, and you can never, because it happens at such a young age, you can never comprehend what had happened to you. And it's sad, really. Brad Pitt was in that movie.
That's okay. All right. Like that was a deep moment interrupted by Brad Pitt is in that movie.
Well,
Okay.
I never realized he was in that movie. He's very low on the list, so he wasn't like a star or anything in this movie. So but yeah, it's like, and that's one of the reasons why I picked this, because we've done a couple of lighthearted movies, and this one I knew was going to be very heavy, and it's a documentary, so it's even that much more harsh to kind of watch and experience. But it's like there are times that you have to shed light on these things, otherwise it can happen to other people. And that's kind of one of the things I really wanted to do with this. And like I said, I was thinking about it a lot on Mother's Day, because it was my mom who was really the more vocal of the two, who said, no, you're not going to go to this retreat. And I do thank her for that. And I appreciate that she had kind of the foresight that I didn't have at the time.
Well, think about that. How crazy is that there was a time when that sort of thing was acceptable? Like sending your kids off with, just sending your kids out with people other than yourself.
Well, I mean, see, I was in the band. I was in band camp. The band may have consisted of like 90 kids or whatever. Out of those 90 kids, maybe 10 parents and a school representative and the band director, maybe an assistant band director. So you're talking like, 13 people, 15 people to watch over 50 to 100 kids. So it's like, things can happen. You hope, you put your trust in the teacher, you put your trust in the other parents, and you really hope that all those people deserve the trust that you put into them. And thankfully, for me, all those people were trustworthy that I've ever encountered. I don't know if my mom knew something and didn't say anything. I don't know if she just had, if she knew this was a thing and just was suspicious, or if it was just a, my kid's never going to hang out by himself with a priest kind of a thing. But I was an altar boy as well, and I would do service for Sunday morning mass, and nothing ever happened to me. So maybe my mom may have known something about these particular priests, or may have just had a bad feeling, maybe had a premonition, whatever it was. This was a time that she said, no, you're not going to do this, for no real good reason, which seemed at the time no real good reason. And maybe she didn't have a real good reason. She just thought it wasn't a good idea, But it's like you learn in this documentary that the Catholic Church will lie to protect the Catholic Church, and lying is one of those sins that you confess. So why is it okay to do the thing that you're not allowed to do as a practitioner to protect the Catholic Church? Can't we just say, hey, we screwed up, sorry about that, we're kicking this guy out, he obviously has problems, or we're going to send this guy to therapy because he obviously has problems, and we will do what we can to rectify this. We'll send your kid to therapy, whatever. I mean, it's the Catholic Church. They're a nonprofit organization, quote unquote nonprofit organization. So it's not like you're going to really be able to sue them and get any kind of money out of them. But for them to at least say, hey, you know what? One of our guys screwed up and we're going to take care of that. That would be a nice thing. That would be something that I think would go a long way with a lot of practitioners. Instead of being lied to, have them be held to the standards they held everybody else to, and tell the truth and accept that blame. And if you do get sued by somebody, well, then maybe you need a better screening process for your employees.
One of the crazy things about this is we will never know just how. I think this thing is rampant. I think that sort of behavior is rampant within the church. We'll never know just how bad it is. I happen to believe it's just the tip of the iceberg. But you said earlier, like you mentioned how your mom might have known about it. Here's the thing. I think the generation before us knew about this thing, but we're never willing to really kind of address it and to really let it come forward. A different world, and like for instance, in this documentary, there's a scene where Tony actually goes and meets with some of his childhood friends. Yeah, do you remember the scene?
Yeah.
Like they're in the bar and he's sitting with two of them, and he's actually laying out everything. And this is all out in the open. He's telling them about this experience, and they're very open about it. And the friend right next to him, after he asked, like Tony asked, "Am I doing the right thing by doing this?" He is still very much blindly defending the church in itself. And I think that sort of attitude existed in the generations before, and they were aware of this sort of thing, but never wanted to fully address it because of either loyalty to the church, or just never decided that it wasn't important enough or big enough, or was just too humiliating to actually bring it up.
I think a lot of that is true, but I work for one of these rideshare apps, which I don't know why they call it a rideshare app because it's nothing like a rideshare, but that's a topic for another day. So in my day-to-day work life, I ferry fraternity guys and sorority girls from party to party or for dorm to party or dorm to dorm or whatever. So
Are any of them sexy?
are you asking about the fraternity guys?
You know what I'm asking.
Yes,
I,
the women are attractive. They're dressed to the nines, which that also bothers me that they get dressed to the nines and then the fraternity guys are in cargo shorts and flip flops. I'm like, put forth some effort, dude. But again, a topic for another day. But there's a mentality in the fraternity, in any kind of fraternity of brotherhood. Anybody who's part of a union knows this. Police officers, regard this in high standards. The Catholic Church obviously holds this in high standards. The fraternities themselves on college campuses hold this in high standards. It's kind of like Fight Club. You don't talk about what goes on in these situations. And I am kind of in a unique situation where I'm a fly on the wall. They will talk amongst themselves about fraternity business as if I'm not there, which is fine with me because I learn how big of a douchebag some of these guys are. And it's last year, and I wasn't working for this company last year, but last year somebody found a girl drunk, passed out in the streets after a fraternity party. She was just told to, at one point, to go away, to leave, and she passed out in the street. And because of this, she could have gotten run over. She could have succumbed to alcohol poisoning. I believe she lived through this. I think she did have to go to the hospital. She did live through this. But it's like, there's that mentality that's like, you're not a part of our organization, so you're going to go hang out in the wind, and we're going to deny that anything bad happened to you. And even like sorority girls will do this. Their friends will get sick and from alcohol poisoning, and they don't want to call the authorities because they don't want to get in trouble. It has nothing to do with their friends' well-being. They don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to get in trouble by the authorities. They don't want to get in trouble by their parents. So they will let their friend die so they don't have to take responsibility for them. And it's the same thing with the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is this fraternity, and everybody part of the Catholic Church, whether you're a priest or whether you're uh, a citizen who's Catholic, are part of this fraternity, and you don't really talk about what goes on in there. And if a priest makes a mistake, he isn't held to the same standards for some reason. They cut them some slack. And it's like you wouldn't cut RuPaul some slack if she was a big bitch and you met her on the street and you asked her for an autograph and she ripped you a new one. But, this priest who molests somebody, who does something infinitely worse, just gets shuffled off. His paperwork gets lost. He gets shuffled over to a new uh, church, to a new city, to a new state, and he kind of gets lost. And nobody realizes that he's a pedophile. He doesn't have to. And if you're a pedophile, you can't live close to a school. You have to register with whatever list it is. You have to tell your neighbors who and what you are.
right.
As a priest, you don't have to do any of that. You live on campus of a school. So you do the exact opposite of what you're supposed to do. You don't have to go around telling all the parents of the school that, you're a sex offender. You know, they that fraternity mentality is kind of what destroys these organizations because they start to believe that they're bigger than what they are, and that they can do no wrong, and that what wrong they do is outweighed by the good that they do, and it's
Right.
not. Because if you save 100 souls, but yet you torment one, then then you're evil. You're not a good person.
Uh, that,
Because
that 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 speaks to the perceived power that this organization has,
yeah,
and just I I don't want to villainize or demonize the church in itself, but it I don't there are changes that need to be made, and one of them, and I this is just a theory on my part. When you take somebody like a young impressionable adult, segregate that adult from the rest of society, put him only with other males, tell him that you're not allowed to take a wife, tell him that this is wrong, tell him that these things are sinful, really ingrain and program his mind a certain way. The mind is not meant to be programmed. It is meant to process things. When you try to program the mind, things go horribly, horribly wrong. And the kind of, things that they expect, priests and bishops to go through to actually get the job, I think, I believe, kind of condition certain people to actually become these sort of predators. And I think that's a conversation that people should be having.
No, exactly. And there's a show, I don't know if it's still on the air or not, starring Jeremy Irons, The Borgias, I think. It's about Jeremy Irons' character becomes the Pope, and this is all based on actual events.
Yeah.
If you watch the show, he's married, and he has children, and some of his children are priests. It's only the turn of the 20th century that the Catholic Church started saying that you can't have a wife. Up until then, up until the 1890s, priests were able to get married. They could have wives. They could have their own family. And for some reason, the Catholic Church decided that wasn't going to happen anymore. And I don't understand why. And I think that caused more problems than it solved. And I think that's in part why some of this happens, because it's kind of like a prison mentality. You have urges and you have no real outlet. So unfortunately, there's this expression, we're only human. And we say that when we colossally screw something up, because deep down we know that there are certain things we just can't say no to, or certain things that we choose not to say no to. Like, I enjoy soda, and I know that if I cut soda out of my life, I will lose weight. And I'm not obese or anything, but right now I can't fit into any of my suit pants because I'm fat.
Yeah.
And I know that if I cut soda out of my diet, I will lose probably enough weight to actually be able to button my pants. But I don't do that because I would rather actually start working out and work out more just so I can have soda in my diet, because I choose not to give that up. I choose to have that weakness. And it's like some people, they can do it for a while, and I've done it for a while. I've given up soda for like months on end, and then I start doing it again, and it's like crack, and then I have to drink it, and it's
I'm the
like,
same way.
yeah, and it's you put a person into a situation and ask so much of them, eventually they're going to crack.
If I told you not to think of the color red, what would you think of?
Obviously, I would think of red.
Right. That's and that's a microcosm of just what taboo culture does, what restriction and uh, kind of control of one's urges does. The more you tell somebody that they can't have this or they're not allowed to do this, the more they fantasize, the more they obsess over actually what it would feel like to actually do that. To tell a young man that for him sex is wrong and cannot be done, that he must not he must avert the sins of the flesh or whatever. The more he obsesses about it, the more he looks for an outlet for it. And unfortunately, for a lot of these people, the only people that are around for that outlet to occur with are other young males. And so it becomes this sort of weird thing where they're conditioned to. It's almost like you're conditioning them to be attracted to the people they grew up around, or the people that are around them the most, which are unfortunately, young people. Back to we can actually talk about stuff that we might use for this podcast, because it's a podcast about film.
It's a podcast about film, but film, imitates life, and And if it wasn't for stories like Twist of Faith, we wouldn't have stories like Sleepers, because it's those things happen. So let's make a movie about it so we can bring these kind of things to light. So
Right. Talking about Twist of Faith as a film, as a documentary, I thought really well done. It is well done for the lack of the bells and the whistles. There isn't a whole lot. There isn't a narrator in the story, if you notice.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
There is not there at most there are captions on screen. A straight up just presentation, and it. I happen to believe that documentaries are both the most serious and probably most important use of film that there are. They are the distillation, the refinement, the dilution down to the essentials of what film's transformative properties are in society. When the guy that first created film, and I googled him right after I saw this documentary, Edward Mybridge, and I'm pronouncing that wrong. I'm sure it's not spelled the way it sounds. Edward Mybridge was first coming up with motion picture when he was actually being able to actually record something happening in real life. Things like this is what he had in mind. Yes, there was always going to be that artistic use of motion picture where you would take it and you would make movies and you would make these incredible portray these incredible stories on film. But there was always the part of him. I know there was always a part of in the back of his mind that realized this is not just for portrayal. It's not for depiction. It is for documentation. That's what a documentary is. There is nothing is being depicted or represented. It is just being presented. And I this film for me is kind of like because it's one of the better documentaries I've seen. Is film being used in the way that it should be used, in the most important way that it should be used? It is a conveyance of actual occurrences in the world from one person to another, and I don't think documentaries get the love that they deserve. They never will, not with the Hollywood machine and the industrial complex for film. But documentaries for me hold a special place. I think they're very serious forms, and I think they just need a little bit more love. That was my rant about that.
No, that's very good, and you're absolutely right. And even when a movie is made and it says based on a true story, that never means that anything in that movie is true. What based on a true story means that somebody, the writer, heard about these two guys who did this thing, and he's like, I'm going to create a story about it. Two guys rob a bank,
It
in
is a
Los Angeles.
it is a representation, not a presentation.
Yeah, so when you do a movie that's based on actual events, there's a small nugget of it. When you do a documentary, it's not based on actual events, it is actual events.
We take so much for granted how important just the actual motion picture is. Like, and it's the most successful art form out there. I think what's more successful than movies and television, right?
After that, it would probably be like still photography.
Well, in any art form. After that, I would probably say music.
Oh, music, yeah. I told you I don't like music, so I didn't think of that.
Yeah, we take it so much for granted. I don't think it's like kids today with their new phones. Like when we were kids, we didn't have this stuff, and so they get pissed off when something's buffering on their phones. Like a comedian said, I think it was like either Louis C.K. When something's too slow on their phone, they complain. Shut the fuck up! You're sending a message to space. It has to come back down. Kids take that for granted. I think the world takes just film for granted. I mean, it is it is the one thing that has actually made the world smaller for me. Like social media is doing a great strides in connecting the world. But film for me really changed the world in that it made the world smaller, especially television, where you could actually show images, convey things that were happening all the way on the other side of the world with the sort of detail and clarity that you would not get anywhere else. You can read about something, get a full description of it, but there is nothing quite like actually witnessing it.
No, you're absolutely right. With like how the news was back in the day, like showing scenes of the war, like either the World War II when they went to the theaters to see the movie reels, the news reels, or even like during the '60s when in your house you saw the horrors of war with Vietnam. Yeah, it's a very powerful medium, and it can bring people together. Also with references in culture, because before, when it was theater, live theater was the only form of entertainment. Only rich people could go to live theater because they're the only ones who had money. Now, anybody can have a TV and the 4 or 6 basic channels that comes with it, and you can watch Seinfeld, you can watch Friends, and you know the quotes, and you can go up to anybody, whether they're rich or whether they're poor, and say, "Hey, did you ever watch Seinfeld? Remember that episode?" and have a conversation with them about it. It's a way of kind of removing the social classes to some degree. It removes all that stuff that made us think that we were above everyone else and gave us kind of a level playing field. You could say, "Did you see that news report on whatever? Did you see that documentary on whatever? Did you see that TV show?" And be able to connect with people that way. Anyway, so since Mario's not here, do you want to pick the movie or movies to watch for the next week?
Yes, I actually have one in mind.
Okay.
Last week we're talking about Wes Anderson, and we brought up Bill Murray,
Uh-huh.
and I told people that I prefer the Bill Murray before Wes Anderson. There's a movie called Quick Change.
Quick Change. Yes, I have seen that. That's with Gina Davis, I believe, where he's a clown trying to rob a bank.
Yeah, sort of. There's a lot more to it than that.
There's a lot
I
more to
happen
it, but yeah.
I I happen to really like that movie, and I thought it'd be kind of fun to see that old Bill Murray. But this is my thing. I want you to watch that Bill Murray comedy set in New York, and I want you to watch another comedy set in New York, done within the last 10 years. Just a way to kind of compare cultural changes that have happened over the last, you know, came out in 1990, 25 years.
I'm just writing all this down so I can tell Mario so he gets all the information this time.
This is kind of like your voice memo or something.
Yeah,
Note to self.
I know.
Okay.
Believe me, I listen to this show like 100 times when I try to edit it and make sure that it's all sound good and whatnot. And I, contrary to popular belief, I actually don't enjoy the sound of my own voice, so it is a little bit torturous.
I don't think any of us enjoy the sounds of our own voices. I cried when I first heard my voice. Not really, but I wanted to. I cried when I first heard the sound of my own voice on another podcast.
I did cry when I heard the sound of your voice the first time.
Right?
So we watched Quick Change plus another comedy set in New York made in the last 10 years.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to have to look into that because I'm not up to date with all the location of the comedies. So
You fans at home, I can't recommend this movie enough. Go see or Google Quick Change with Bill Murray.
I will. I've actually been putting on the website. Great segue, by the way. Links to all the movies that we've been, or most of the movies that we've been talking about, the ones that we watch for the show, and some of the ones that we do talk about. If you go to MOF Ninja, you can look up the show notes. You can get links to the movies to rent them off of Amazon. I don't have any other links because I actually have an affiliate with Amazon. So you would actually be helping out the show by going to Amazon through these links and renting them. So
When do I start getting paid for this?
okay, as soon as people go to mof.ninja, review the show notes, click on the links, go to Amazon and rent the movie, I will get a check. Actually, it'll probably go into my checking account automatically. And then, depending on how much money that is, I will disperse it amongst you and Mario.
Ignoring the fact that that involves me trusting you with my money, what you're saying is that fans have to go to MOF Ninja,
Mm-hmm.
MOF.ninja, actually look through our website, maybe even listen to the actual podcast.
Which you can also do there, yes.
Yes, yeah, and you can also leave a comment. You would have to click on the link to a certain movie and maybe go into Amazon.com, purchase a movie there, and then view it.
Well, I have the links to those movies, so all I have to do is click on it. It will take you to the movie page for Amazon, and then all you have to do is click, purchase or rent or whatever. And yes, and then Amazon, because we referred people to them, will give us a little bit of a kickback.
Huh. Very simple. And would it kill you folks to just kind of like suggest us to your friends?
Definitely tell your friends, tell your neighbors, and if you want to hear us talk about a movie, suggest the movie.
Yeah,
And
that's actually not a bad idea. At some point, I would want them to suggest movies. I want you guys to actually tell us which to do every week.
I would love to hear from people on what movies they would like us to talk about and what movies they like. So, yes, go to MOF Ninja. Tell us which movies you want us to talk about. Tell us which movies you enjoyed that we talked about.
Tell me you love me.
Tell Jamal that you love him.
Yeah.
And on that note, I guess we say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thanks for joining us. Goodbye.
Join the makers each week as they discuss film, TV, and pop culture. To learn more about them, go to mof.ninja. This is Sean Connery saying goodbye.